listening to the EleAMental podcast.
Shut up!
Welcome to my mind. My name is Al Nichols, and you're listening to the EleAMental podcast. This is entry number 110. So it is November 16th, the time I'm recording this. And obviously, if you live here in the States, I think you understand that some big news has happened back a little over a week ago. So last Saturday, from the day I'm recording this, we finally got word after a very long, tense week that Joe Biden was now president-elect of the United States. Now, I wish I could say that means everything with Trump is over. Now, it will be, at least him as the president. Though, I have been very cautious and tried to remind people that Donald Trump won't be going away. Donald Trump is a fixture of American society. I mean, we can hope that a lot of these trials, or cases rather, that are happening across, New York in specific, because there is a case that's being heard there right now that is seeking a genetic sample from Donald Trump to see if he was actually the perpetrator of a sexual assault crime. There's a lot of things happening. And it could also be, that there are other charges brought against him once he is out of office, charges that people have wanted to bring against him, but you cannot file charges against a sitting president, and not in the way that that you typically would anyway. But on January 20th at noon, he becomes a private citizen once again, and when that happens, well, I guess we'll be finding out what the world has in store for him. Though I really wouldn't count him out. I would love to say that once Deutsche Bank reclaims all their loans or calls them all in, that he'll go bankrupt and lose all of his properties. And that's probable, right? Because I don't see him without the influence of the president, and especially the reputation he's created for himself, that he'll be very successful at being able to come up with some 400 plus million. In fact, we don't really know how much money he owes in total. We know how much is reported that he owes, but there could be a lot more. So it's hard to say. It also makes him a huge risk for our country because a man who held intelligence documents in his hands, even though he probably didn't read them, I'm sure he retained some knowledge and information that could be valuable to a enemy state, that they would want to know that information. And do I have any trust that someone like him wouldn't just go out there and sell it for top dollar? Absolutely not. He probably wouldn't get top dollar either. He'd probably somehow end up getting less with his negotiation skills than more. But it is a huge concern. And that's just the whole things that deal with the legal ramifications of Donald Trump. His followers, his cult, are still very much alive. This past Saturday, we saw them all congregate in Washington, D.C., in various places with their Million MAGA March, because we all know their penchant for originality. And they went into Washington, D.C. There was, 10,000 of them? Not exactly a million. There never really is a million people marching in those things. But a lot, right? A lot of people there and marching because they want They want this election to be recounted, or they want votes thrown out, or they want election fraud to be called out, because that's what Donald Trump has said, right? If you haven't somehow managed to keep up with all of this and I'm your news source, oh God. But I think it's important to follow because we need to know, especially if you're an American. I mean, even if you're not, it is important to know what's happening currently in our country, because unfortunately, if you tune into the wrong source of news, um, you can definitely be told a narrative that is very far from reality. Got a little glimpse of that on my way out of the apartment this morning. My aunt firing on the TV and Fox News blaring, and hearing the perspectives of a bunch of commentators who don't really know the news, don't really care to know the news, even though their news arm of the organization is saying absolutely opposite of what they are, right? Because, well, they can be held for liable, and also, they can be forced to print retractions and other things, since they are reporters, technically. The commentators don't have to do that, right? Your Tucker Carlsons, your Sean Hannitys, your Laura Ingrams. God, I feel sick that I know these people's names and I can actually identify their faces now. But these people are commentators, and they can say whatever the fuck they want and present it as if it's news. And then they go to court and they fight all this shit, and they're able to say that we're not taken seriously, we're not real news. And they win. They win, right? Because judges agree with them. They're not real news, even though something points to the contrary in this, which is the audience who watches. They do very much take it seriously, and they do take it as if it is factual. So we have this million MAGA army, right? In fact, we actually know the number of 72 million, 77 plus million, almost 78 million voted for Joe Biden. It was a very, very, very tight race in a lot of places, even though those are millions more than Donald Trump. It sometimes doesn't really matter because of the Electoral College and how that works. And I agreed with a lot of people from overseas when they hear that system. Yeah, it is insane that is our system, and that our votes really, in some places, just don't count. Here in the state of California, I mean, we have a lot of electoral votes. I think like 72, if I'm not mistaken. We have a lot of electoral votes here in California, right? Because we're a big state with a huge population. More importantly, huge population, right? And it's been funny, even listening to people looking at these electoral maps, right? Like, well, look at all that red, and not realizing that there's maybe 1,000 people at most that live in these giant tracts of land, mostly farmers who don't live anywhere near civilization. And then all the places that you would actually want to go, all the places you would spend your vacation, all the places that all the money goes, right, is in those major cities. Okay, even when you go to the South, you look at the major cities and they're all blue. That's not a surprise. That's typical because these people are around new ideas, varying cultures. That's a melting pot of society. That's where that's happening. So the further away you are from that, the more you're going to hold views that align with Donald Trump. The closer you are to that, you're impactfully changed by the society you live in. You have a need and a care to want to help others, or you're a sociopath and you don't want to do any of those things. But you're still probably going to go vote for Biden even then if you live there. And sometimes you won't. So anyway, it's been an interesting time in our country, and honestly kind of scary. It is very scary when you hear people talking about civil war. Not that I'm worried about someone holding a gun up into my face and threatening to end my life because I voted for Joe Biden. No, it's more that people are that militarized in their beliefs. Because, I mean, it just shows how deep that goes. A verse from the Bible that I've had to pull out on numerous occasions with people who especially talk about prophecy. A lot of those prophecies intertwined with the presidency of Donald Trump. Deuteronomy 18:22 talks about false prophets, talks about a prophet who speaks in my name and says something that is not true, that ends up being false, is not speaking in my name. They're speaking in their own. And they are a false prophet. The Bible kind of took that pretty seriously. If you were a prophet speaking on behalf of God, you had to be right. Like 100% of the time. Today, we don't hold those standards because how could you? They didn't even hold those standards then. That's a lie. And these stories most often are made up or skewed. It's hard to say what the actual truth was, if these events even came to be in any kind of way, or if they're interpretations or directly stolen from other religious texts. It's hard to say. But that doesn't matter. That's what these people believe. So I use something that they believe and I put that right in their face. Deuteronomy 18:22. If you believe this is perfect and holy and the undisputed word of God, then you have to recognize that a lot of people came out and said that Donald Trump will be president. Now, their defenses generally are more like, well, it's not over yet, right? They're recounting this election. Then I have to remind them, well, Donald Trump has gone into a lot of places and sued, and he's gone online and Twitter and other places and had his lapdog Rudy Giuliani go out there and say that this is fraud, that this is a sham, that the Democrats are trying to steal this election. And then they go in court, and then a judge asks them, are you claiming that there is fraud at play? And all the lawyers are saying, well, no. And this has gotten so bad that even Donald Trump's legal defense, people that he's paid $20 million to at least in the last 4 years, yeah, they'll represent him for a while, but they have to be careful at a point too, because then all of a sudden they put their own firms in danger with thousands of employees. And problem is that they have to pay liability insurance and other things that could escalate if they find themselves embroiled in some sort of strange conspiracy that they are going out there and leading in the press with no proof and no evidence and not reliable witnesses. See, this is a problem. Ultimately, when you go out there and you make a claim, right? The claim is the first part. The proof is the second. If you don't have that, then you don't have a case. And that's what's happened with Donald Trump. Ever since the election has been called in many places, saying, when did the media start calling the elections? Well, you didn't seem to have a problem with it in 2016 before you even had 270 electoral votes. You went out on stage and declared victory. And the following day, Hillary Clinton came out and went ahead and conceded the election, right? Because that's the way it's supposed to happen. We have a little thing called numbers, okay? Mathematics is important, and it also shows why we should be smarter in this country, why we should be pursuing knowledge and education, because there are some of us who keep pulling us back, right? I don't claim to be a genius of any sort. In fact, when it comes to mathematics, I have to admit that it is one of my greatest weaknesses, right? Numbers. Though I have to say, as an adult, I've become more interested. And I've kind of pushed myself to learn more, take an opportunity here and there to, okay, you did really bad at algebra when you were younger. Maybe you have more of an interest now because it's clear to see all of the things happening. And it makes it something worth, taking an interest in. If it's something I can wrap my head around now because I can contextualize it easier, well, that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, Donald Trump has lost this election and he is losing options quickly. In fact, today it was reported that he actually ended up pulling out in a lot of different places, his lawsuits before they're even heard, because they know they don't have a case. Does that mean he's done? Fuck no. Donald Trump ain't done. No, Donald Trump will continue to try. He understands that the courts aren't going to work for him. So he's just changing plans, right? And he's saving a little bit of money too, because he is not an endless well of money right now. The campaign was, I said that weird. The campaign was like hemorrhaging money, and they'd spent a lot of money early on for like a Super Bowl ad and other things. So when it actually came time for the election, they were like actually pulling from markets left and right, and focusing their efforts in certain regions because they didn't have the money to saturate all the different markets with commercials, right? So it's not like he has, again, he doesn't have all the money in the world to handle all of this. He's not really the millionaire, the billionaire that he's projected himself to be. He is in real financial straits, and there are real debts that are coming up. Here comes a fire truck. The joys of recording this sitting in a car. Anyway, so if I had a guess what his next move would be, well, it's going to be exactly what he's done in the past. He sees all these people on, I would say on his front lawn, but they actually couldn't convene on Pennsylvania Avenue, as you typically could, because go online. This is hilarious and concerning, right? I'm laughing, but I'm also kind of like stressing out because it is something that's just not right. That is abnormal. That makes you realize that you're really not living in a democracy anymore when you kind of see this shit. There are numerous barricades, layers of barricades around the White House that extend all the way out, several streets, in fact. There's a square there that I don't remember the name of. It's even past that. And all of these fences are guarded, and it's to keep everyone back, right? Now, these have been built, and they keep adding them as a result of Donald Trump's terrible way that he has handled, especially Black Lives Matter and protests. This probably happened a lot after, too, when he went through Black Lives Matter Park there, and then marched his way with a goon patrol to the church on the corner so that he could hold a Bible upside down and pose with it. That only made that worse, right? And so he's turned the people's house into a fortress. And, I'm sure he thinks that he can hold himself up in there and, dispute this election and hell, maybe even eventually get this thing overturned. How exactly? Well, I don't actually have any confidence that he can. But I do have 100% certainty that he will try. With his limited knowledge, with his ego, he really knows this. He manipulates and controls these people who sycophantically follow him religiously. I've been joking about this a lot. It's an annoying joke, I understand. But when he passes by a church and he sees a cross on their front lawn or on their building, he thinks, oh, they put that there for me. All right. Literally, that is where his ego's at. And so we are dealing with a narcissistic megalomaniac who knows he has these very vulnerable, manipulated people right around his finger. My family is definitely some of those people. People around here that I'm currently watching driving by the street that I'm sitting next to are many of them too. They are going to support every single thing that he says. They're not going to question it. They're going to figure, well, you know what? He's the president. He has probably some sort of insight. They're not thinking about the desperate actions of a man who just lost re-election. They're not thinking about his track record of never being able to handle loss or defeat in any way, being able to handle any kind of criticisms, right? They don't care about all of that. In fact, it's like that's completely wiped from their memory. They think of him in some regards like they would Jesus. Maybe even more highly because, Trump is an American and Jesus was an immigrant. I mean, I'm not even kidding when I say things like that. Because there is a desperation in all these people that I'm seeing that it's like I understand where it comes from. I don't understand how it can survive this long after everything has been shown to be false. Now, with that said, in private conversations that I've had, some with family, some with people outside who are Trump supporters, because look, I go very hard against Donald Trump. I don't necessarily go very hard against Trump supporters unless it's called for. You want to start name calling, you want to start attacking someone, then I'm all yours. I'll be your huckleberry. But usually I reserve that vitriol to the man himself. For example, I've been going on to Twitter every day. Not every day, but every few days, right? And, I look for his latest tweets, and he's saying, well, this was a rigged election and blah, blah, blah. And I will go ahead and reply to it with some gif that usually calls him a loser. Jim Carrey has been a great selection. Found some wonderful ones of Chris Farley. Any occasion I can find someone calling him a loser. There was one occasion when it was so desperate what he was saying that I found a gif from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Frank hires a prostitute at one point, and she tells Dennis to shut up, baby dick. I love that line. I put that on Donald Trump's Twitter. Shut up, baby dick. So that is out there, right? But I I don't really go hard against people who support Trump, because if I feel like there's a conversation, like I can actually get through in some way, have a moment where I can bring some cognitive dissonance to them, because that can happen. What I've realized is when it comes to these matters, I might be one of the very few people who can reach, especially a really embroiled Christian. I mean, and some of the worst ones, some of the most fundamental, faith healing, tongue talking people that you can think of, right? Like the Paula White types. Now, I don't think I could get through to her, but I'm saying a lot of the people who follow, they're not all that strong. And I don't want to call them stupid. Let's be very clear here. We're not talking about a matter of stupid. We're talking about a matter of people being manipulated. I think you have to get it through your mind that this is no different than the way a cult works. These people often, I mean, look, are there many people out there who do lack intelligence? Yes, but that kind of goes across all party lines. I've heard Democrats before who say things that I agree with, but they don't even understand the basic principles of why I believe that, right? They just, it sounds good to them, you know, they've decided that's a good thing, but they don't actually understand why. This is a problem that we just have in American culture. A lot of people are not really all that filled in on the details, and nor do they really want to be. They want someone to tell them that this is the way it is, and this is good, and this is bad, and they get all their source of information usually from one source. Whether that be Fox News or CNN, okay? I'm not really saying the two are equal, but I am saying that it's important to be able to pull information from multiple different sources that aren't necessarily connected together, and they're not getting their information from the same well. Anyway, I know I'm like dealing with allergies, of course, because today it decided to be 80 degrees out of all the days it's been 60. Anyway, so with these conversations that I've been having, I don't really attack them, right? It's not that I'm folding to like what they say, you know. I mean, I have done that in the past, right? Where you kind of like, you know, kind of agree with them slightly, even though you're not really. Now what I do is I stand pretty firm. Like, you know, if they ask me what's my political affiliation, I'm like, well, I'm a Democrat. Usually they're the ones who start asking questions first. So, well, how can you support that Biden guy, you know, out there touching children and everything and blah, blah, blah. I often won't even really address that, because I'll be like, you know, what, he's showing affection to his children. Is that really all that abnormal? You know, and mind you, he's a grandpa, right? And he's had a lot of he's had a lot of loss in his life, right? Like the loss of his wife and his daughters. I mean, like, he has gone through a lot of heartache. So wouldn't it make sense that someone would just hold on a little bit tighter to the people that they love around them? And I'm like, and then, you know, a lot of other things are just Photoshop. And we all know that there's fake news out there. You don't think that's fake news too, right? It's like you dig a little deeper, you'll find that information, but then instantly I'll redirect it, right? Because I don't want to get weighed down in that. That's usually like, often what will happen is you're talking to them and they want to take all the things that Trump has been accused of, and then they want to try to somehow make those same arguments about Joe Biden. It's best to dismiss those, right? And I don't just mean like not address them, but like to quickly and very out of hand just say like, look, like there is no substance to this. There is substance when it comes to Donald Trump. There is no substance when it comes to Joe Biden. There are loose connections made by strange photos and weird reports with people who won't even really put their real name on them, right? Websites that are out of nowhere, no real legitimacy to that entire process, right? There's no transparency to it to show that this is legitimate, that this is real, that this evidence is factual and based in truth. And so I often move off to other things. I'm like, no, I want to talk about Donald Trump himself, because you're asking me why I voted for Joe Biden. Well, I didn't vote for Joe Biden for the same reasons that you voted for Donald Trump, right? I voted for Joe Biden because he's not Donald Trump, period. And it's like, I would have probably voted for many other people who were marginally better than Donald Trump himself. Okay. And it's not because they also want to go into the equivalency of like, lesser evils. I stay away from that too. I'm like, yeah, but the point is lesser evil, right? I want someone who is lesser evil. But I go into it pretty quick. I talk about the fact that under Trump's administration, because this is an easy thing for me to talk about, trans and gay rights have been rolled back, right? And they're like, well, what laws has he passed? I'm like, he hasn't passed necessarily laws, but what he has done in his Justice Department is roll back the way that they actually pursue those cases. So Title VII, I believe, is the one that covered on the basis of sex, that had to do with sex discrimination. Okay. And the Obama administration, the reason that they were able to start covering a lot of cases that had to do with transgender rights is because they used the term sex and were able to broaden that to also mean transgender individuals. So a lot of their definitions, and it was one of the reasons that schools, like remember North Carolina had the bathroom bill, a lot of controversy around that. They actually lost a lot of money in the state as a result of that because a lot of Hollywood pulled out and decided, well, we're just going to go to Georgia. So the Obama administration decided, okay, we're going to find a way to protect the rights of those students and those athletes and these individuals who are not protected currently under many state laws. See, here for me in California, I'm not necessarily affected by that because the state does have laws in place to protect people who are part of the LGBTQIA and plus community. And I'm protected here. So my aunt, for example, has asked me a number of times about this, and I've told her this explanation too. She was one person who's like, well, how's it personally affected you? Because she knows that I'm not affected by that law. And I had to look at her. I'm like, it doesn't matter if it hasn't personally affected me or not. It's the fact that this is his stance. And, again, the tendency is to push that onto someone else. And that's not Trump's agenda. I'm like, yeah, it is, because it's part of this is part of his entire, platform. Okay. He selected these people to be around him. And this is where he stands. And let's not forget, this is also the guy who's gone out there and said things about transgender people in the military that were completely off base and couldn't be substantiated and was not upheld, when it came to the actual, the military was like, fuck no, we're ignoring that. That's some crazy bullshit there. And also his claims were just held to be completely untrue. In fact, when you actually look at the service record of many people who are transgender in the armed forces, they are not only back very quickly, but it's not something that requires a lot of downtime. It's not something that requires a lot of upkeep necessarily. And also there's a dedication and devotion even to their service as a result. So it's like, okay, well, this is obviously just some religious agenda being driven through with your spiritual advisors around you. Yeah, and I am talking about Paula White and Kenneth Copeland, these fucking assholes. But anyway, who have made extraordinary asses of themselves in the last couple of weeks with their fucking ha ha ha. And then Paula White on says, shun dun 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 dun. I call upon the blah 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 blah. Like, oh God, just shut the fuck up. Shut up, baby dick. So I have to point it out. It's like, yeah, because the guy hasn't been able to change many laws, right? Since he's been in office, that's something that people can often get their heads around. He hasn't actually been able to change many laws. Every time he's tried, it ends up going to a federal court and it gets overturned. And they try to advance it to the next level of courts or to a different district and it gets overturned there. And it's like he hasn't been able to make laws as a president because, well, he doesn't really actually understand the law. He just wants things to happen. And so, that is exactly what happened with transgender rights. They just stopped protecting people of the LGBT. That's it. That's what they stopped doing. Now, under a Biden administration, it's very likely that the Justice Department, and I mean the Attorney General, right? Because this was back when Sessions came in. It was upheld when Barr came in as well. They didn't change anything. They decided, no, we're just not going to offer protections to everyone. They always say this kind of shit. They did the same thing with the DACA recipients. Well, Obama did this illegally, okay? He brought all these kids in, which, whatever. And he found, because Obama dealt with having a Senate and a House at one point both against him. So in order to pass anything, he had to be pretty clever, and a lot of that had to be done through executive order. Exactly what Donald Trump has done, even with the support of the House and the Senate when he first took office. He still has the support of the Senate. So it's like, okay, like you can see the disparity here with someone who knew the law and someone who clearly doesn't, except that they know how to break it. And so that is what's happened, right? We just have a president who has no intention of ever protecting people of marginalized, of a marginalized state, right? And you can see it very clearly in his children too. Trump might hide some of his feelings some of the time, which is kind of hard to believe, but it's true. Don Jr., hell fucking no, right? That guy is a huge bigot and a raging homophobe and transphobe. And, Ivanka does a very good job, I'm sure, keeping herself composed. She might actually have very differing beliefs than the rest of her family. It's possible. But still, right? Like everyone in that family has some really terrible ideas about how they want to run the government. And like I said, even though Trump is getting out of office, Don Jr. is looking at trying to take over the RNC. So that might happen. I mean, and I say it might happen because it probably will. Even though Trump gave a glowing recommendation to the current president of the RNC. That doesn't really matter. I mean, the Trump family right now, even in this loss, they have, again, unbridled support. The people who believe in Donald Trump believe that he's there because of God, that he is a spiritual warrior, okay? Which is the most idiotic thing that anyone has ever said. And I feel stupid for even saying it. I'm not saying he is. I'm saying I'm trying to distance myself from that quote already. Because it is ridiculous. It's like we elect people into office all the time. Why does anyone think that Donald Trump is any different? All right. I mean, what is he? Is he just the political outsider that you all supported? Or is he some sort of new savior figure? Like, well, Jesus was here 2,000 years ago, and we've been waiting on his ass a long time. But he hasn't shown the fuck up. But Donald Trump's right here, and he believes in us. He believes he loves us. It will become very clear, maybe not instantly, but in time, that Donald Trump did not give a shit about anyone except himself. America first, me first. And that's on display right now. With all the legal challenges that he goes out and makes, with all the claims of fraud against the American election and our voting system, where he's trying to literally dismantle our system of government to keep him in office, to tear down the way that we elect leaders and actually erode the confidence that we have in our system. And some people think like, well, that won't go anywhere. Well, look, American democracy, they call it an experiment. Very much is. And it is much more fragile than we would like to think. We can spend trillions of dollars on the military, on our national security. But the reason we do that often is because we are very afraid about just how fragile we are. And in truth, the only way to really guarantee security is when you work with other countries, when you stop making everyone an enemy, when you stop looking at people who want to migrate into this country as less than or evil, or it really just boils down to racism, usually. People don't want other people moving into this country because they're brown. Brown, black, Asian, doesn't matter. They only want, they think now that somehow after 200 and almost 50 years that we are born Americans, which was never the outset goal of this country. It was always supposed to be a place where we brought in new people. We brought in people who were desperate for the ideas and longed for the ideas of American democracy and would come along and help us build. and to build allies and relationships with other countries along the way. There isn't an America first that actually lines up with an American ideology that really aligns with the Constitution. That's not the way it works. I mean, hell, the reason we are a United States of America is because of the partnerships that we formed with France and with, I believe, Germany and other nations who sent their troops here, who died on our soil to help us defend a land that we wanted to find independence from tyranny. So to say now that those people don't matter, those places, they never did anything. They did a lot for us. And even though it was a really long time ago, really in the big picture, it wasn't that long. But if we want to continue, and we actually want to understand what the ideas of freedom are, freedom and liberty, those are two words that often get confused as being the same thing. And I don't really want to break those down here for you, but it's worth taking the time to learn what those words mean. And understanding what American freedom is. It's not just like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. It is a pact, an agreement with the American people. And it's something important. So yes, these concepts, because that's what they are concepts inscribed in paper. They are fragile and they can be destroyed. And Donald Trump is that decimator. He is that individual who comes in. He is the historical figure. His type is the one who comes in and brings an end to that. So it is important to recognize that. It is important to look at this moment in time and remember and be a part of what is happening. See, I would love to sit back and just assume that January 20th at noon, whether Donald Trump wants to go or not, and I do hope he doesn't want to go, Secret Service comes in and they remove a trespasser from the White House. And if they do that, if he actually resists, he locks the door, he refuses to go, well, he'll be a trespasser. And, he might be end up in an orange prison jumpsuit as a result. Because that is illegal. Or, best case scenario, they throw his ass out onto Pennsylvania Avenue, which I would be very, very happy to see as well. But knowing how the process is supposed to work doesn't mean that it absolutely will. I'm not saying that Donald Trump will be president for another 4 years, but I am saying that the American system only works if we work it, if we believe in it. Right? It's not like a belief like faith that has no structure and isn't something that really is designed by us. It's designed by, usually someone with their own selfish motivations. But the American system, even with its flaws, even with the problems that we need to fix, as it is now, it is still a better system than nothing. It's still a better system than a lot of people have. It can be better. But we need to remove someone who's literally tearing it down, tearing it apart, sowing discord and lies and deception and manipulating a huge portion of our population. 72 million people is nothing to scoff at. This was not a landslide victory. I'm not saying that 5 or 6 million people, for Joe Biden on the other side isn't impressive. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there are 72 million people out there who disagree with us. And more than disagree, they passionately believe in the divinity of Donald Trump. You might think that's ridiculous, but go look, go talk. And the next time you see a little cross on a building, just think about what that currently means. Cross or a T. So really, that's all I wanted to share here. I mean, I guess this is a little different than usual because I usually talk about things personally happening to me, but how can you not talk about all of this? It's the one thing that's been on my mind every single day. And yes, I do long for a day where politics is not in the center of my brain, right? Where it's the thing that I think about when I first wake up and the thing I think about when I go to sleep. You know, I want to, until I move, I'm going to have to deal with politics usually on a daily basis, unfortunately, because of my aunt's crazed devotion to Fox News, which is breaking. Which that was a very delightful moment when there was conflict, when they called the election for Trump before anyone else did. I'm sorry, not for Trump, for Biden before anyone else did. And also just like, you know, the disparity between, because usually the news that they have and the commentary isn't so far apart as it's been, but it has been lately. So they're really, you know, frantically looking for any kind of other sources, people who back this idea that there's fraud going on, and unfortunately, all they're really left with is Rudy Giuliani and Kelly McNamee, or whatever the hell her name is. I don't even want to bother to remember her name, right? Like, I already remember Sanders barely now. Like, all these names are starting to kind of drift out of my consciousness, right? Because they're on the way out. But it is something that I keep in mind as I watch all of this happen. You know, it's like these people, I'm not going to have to hear them every single day defending the president as they always have. All right. I'm going to hear new attacks against Joe Biden, but quite frankly, attack away. I wish that Fox News had resembled anything close to legitimate journalism and made credible demands of our president to be better. Instead of trying to mask his abysmal failure in COVID-19, the fact that there are almost 250,000 people dead in this country, and that the numbers are rising and soaring, and by possibly March or April of next year, if the vaccine, because I mean, honestly, do any of us believe that they're going to start putting out vaccines next week? How? Right? They might have them, sure. I mean, we know the pharmacies can generate and produce them very quickly, but distribution of that. And we have a president right now who's not allowing there to be any kind of transition teams in place. No money going to Biden for a transition team. No security reports, except it seems like Biden might be receiving his security reports, his national security reports through a back channel, which is very concerning as well. So, and not for Biden, obviously, just the fact that that is how he has to come about it, and the fact that, Jesus Christ. So, we are playing a dangerous game right now. And like I was saying, that number could end up being 400, 500,000, exactly what was predicted. That's terrifying. It's terrifying to know that that's the case, and that we have a leader still for 60 plus days who is completely incompetent and doesn't want to acknowledge that there's anything going on. We will not shut down the White House. Yeah, we know you won't. You just had to quarantine 120 Secret Service members because of your incompetence. You have more members of your cabinet being tested positive for COVID-19. How many times do you have to fall flat on your face and be proven that you are a fucking idiot before you make any kind of change? And that's just the thing. He won't. Because that would have to admit to some degree that he is fucked up. Right? Even after this election, it doesn't matter. He's still the same old dumbass. And because he is an absolute dumbass, and he's a malicious, evil dumbass at that. So he's stupid and evil. That's a wonderful fucking combination. Anyway, I think I've covered everything that I want to cover here. I appreciate you tolerating me here for this last almost 45 minutes. And hey, maybe in the next few weeks, we'll start talking about other things. I know these haven't been really consistent, and I think I've said this now every single time I record. I think for my own mental health, I have to do these at whatever pace I can. And God, it sounds really I don't know. I don't enjoy saying things like that because I prefer consistency. However, this isn't really a consistent time. And the truth is that there's a lot of things going on. I'll speak personally for a moment. My goal, of course, was to move out in November from my aunt's place. And as of recent, things are just, there's still a lot of struggles. Unfortunately, my car is just dead. I had to, and I talked about this a little while ago. I had to pull it out of a repossession lot, or it had been repossessed. I had to go retrieve it. I paid a lot of money to retrieve it, almost $2,000, which I really didn't have. That my family gave to me, which I'm very appreciative of, and also just the generosity of strangers who came to my aid online. But probably something that was done when they took the car the last time. The car had some serious damage to the electrical components, and it was having a cascading failure. And the car is now, unfortunately, completely dead. So I was able to get back a husk of a car that doesn't work. And I recently had to just finally let it go. I didn't want to do that because that is another thing now that I don't have in my life. Solid transportation. I'm using my aunt's car, who she doesn't really use this car at all. But it's not a fun feeling to not have my own things, right? Not to have my own place, not to have my own car. My job situation is one where I am working consistently. In fact, I'm relied on very heavily currently with the video editing gig that I've been doing, because I think it's the only way that they're making money at this point. However, it's not consistent either. It's I get paid whenever they have the money, and it's not that they're not trying to be consistent. It's not a case of that, right? It's a fact of this is a shitty economy, and people don't have money, and we're having to wait on the kindness of strangers until people can get paid, and it's a shitty situation to be in. It's put me behind in a lot of bills that are owed and a lot of things that I'm trying to get ahead of and take care of in my life. And it's made things more difficult, and it sucks. And like all of you, we're all waiting for another stimulus check, right? That we should have had probably every month. There's still unemployment technically that I could still claim because that I tried to claim for a very long time. And I have paperwork in, and I've been fighting those disputes because I'm not even making enough to really. So there's so many things that are happening. I don't want to get into every single little detail, but it is frustrating because I do feel like everything is working against me. Though when I say that, I know that means all of you too. I know this isn't oh, woe is me, I'm the one. No. That's why I'm hesitant to say these things, because I know we're all going through it. And then the idea of another shutdown possibly. Here in the state of California, things are getting worse rapidly. Because unfortunately, people are stupid. When I said people are stupid on both sides, I meant it. There was people who had massive Halloween celebrations here who are now weeks later from Halloween showing symptoms, and they've gotten other people sick, and it's just spreading constantly. Last month in October, excuse me. I don't know if I talked about all of this, but I was very sick. I did contract COVID-19, but I also got the flu at the same time, or right as I was my symptoms of COVID-19 were lifting. I fought COVID-19 for probably 14 days and then went immediately into the flu. It was hell. It was hell. And unfortunately, I have talked about the person who made everyone sick, and we've learned that they made a lot more people sick than we even imagined. And I was honest with a family member. I'm like, I will always remember that, and there is a special place in hell for them because of their actions, right? It wasn't just an accident. like showing up at Trump rallies and doing all this other shit, and then like being real intimate and personal with people and like refusing to wear a mask. I'm like, this person, right? You can forgive them all you want, right? As if like I give a shit about that. No, they have caused harm. As far as I'm concerned, they deserve to be thrown in jail, right? Just reckless endangerment of others. They got someone who was almost 80 years old, fucking sick with this, who has a compromised immune system. They got someone sick. And it's not the only one. So it makes me angry. It makes me very upset and angry about what we're currently all dealing with. And so 60 days still of Donald Trump is still 60 days. It's still a long time for us to hang in there, right as we're hitting a crescendo of COVID-19. We're seeing numbers worse than we have before. You almost think, like, how is that possible? All it takes is a really, really poor choice of leadership. And here we are. My family's complaining right now about Thanksgiving plans. And I'm like, fuck Thanksgiving. What are you talking about? Besides, what are we thankful for? The other night last night I watched Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. If you don't watch that show, I strongly suggest you do. I love that show. I love John Oliver. I just think he has a witty take on things that it's important. He also really is, he really is a true reporter, like, you know, of the facts of the news. He is a commentator, you know, don't get me wrong. But it does give me some comfort, like in the days of Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, which he's coming back to, but not to The Daily Show, to a new program. But it gave me comfort, you know. And so last night with John Oliver, at the very end of the program, he did this years ago, blowing up the year 2016, you know, symbolically with giant numbers in a stadium. Last night they did that as well with 2020. I cried because I'm like, fuck this year. And because I had a moment to really reflect, like, look at all you've gone through, all you've lost in this last year. Fuck this year. Seriously, fuck this year. There feels like there needs to be a more descriptive curse word created solely for this year. If you use it for anything else, you get slapped immediately. But for this year, because it has been so bad. I mean, I have talked to some people who said, like, I've had worse years. I'm like, holy fuck. And I get it, I do, but I've lost a lot this year. There's been a lot sacrificed on the pyre on the altar of ignorance, whether it be government or my own. It sucks. It really does. Though I say all of that in good hopes. It's not that everything has gotten better, and, you know, and I'm also not like trying to force optimism either. I mean, I'm so relieved that we voted out Donald Trump. That is the first step. There are many other steps to follow. And I know personally, like I said, I was hoping to be out in November. That's just not feasible. It's not. I have to now take care of other things, but I feel good about doing the things that I need to do to move on. And hell, it's not like I could be in a much worse spot. I've had some good perspective. Yeah, I am living on the couch with my family right now, but I am working. I am making a little bit of money, right? I have a lot less financial responsibilities on my shoulder to be able to take care of things that I haven't been for a long time. And I haven't been able to, I mean. And I might actually be able to better position myself. So I took a step back. I took a few steps back so that maybe next year I can actually have a much better life than I've had in a long time. That's the goal. That's the endeavor. And I appreciate you just letting me have a moment here to be honest. and share something, that's often not easy to share because, like I said, everyone's going through it right now. You don't want to just, you don't want to weigh down anybody else with your own, pain. and hopefully you don't feel like I've done that to you here. But like I said, I wanted to share. I've had so many of you share and reach out to me. I've had some fantastic conversations with old friends and new friends, and I want to have more of those moving into the future. And honestly, one thing that always keeps coming back to mind is this podcast is the reasons that I started doing it in the first place. And I keep getting reminded of that time and time again. So anytime I'm like, what do I really have to say? What do I have to share? And it's like, then I realize, I'm like, oh my God, this podcast, what I do here has connected me to some of the best people that I've ever met in my entire life, and allowed me to help others in times when I seemingly haven't been able to help myself. But helping others avoid pitfalls, like, oh, okay, I just went in the pit, everybody, so avoid here. Anyway, that is all I have to share for you guys. So until next time, I'm going to leave you like I always do. Stay extraordinary and escape the ordinary. Bye, everybody.
This concludes this entry of the EleAMental podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to houseofel.com to gain access to our show notes, additional podcasts, the photo diary, and more. If you're feeling financially benevolent and would like to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/lnichols, and for as little as $1 per entry, you'll get an ad-free version of this podcast, patron-only monthly live stream Q&As, and Elle's everlasting gratitude. Music was provided by Damn the Witch Siren, featuring the songs Big Mouth and Soft and Blue. All music was used with the artist's permission. If you want to hear more of their incredible music, go to damnthewitchsiren.com. For inquiries, questions, or last letters, email info@lnichols.com or visit the contact page at houseofel.com. The EleAMental podcast is a subsidiary of House of El. Copyright 2019, all rights reserved.